All right, we are recording. Good to see all of you who are tuning in from real life and elsewhere. This is Pastor Jim Miller of Real Life Church, and I'm here with my friend, Dr. David Morrison, who has an interesting voice and a thoughtful voice to contribute to our conversations about what's going on in our world. Dr. Morrison is a full professor of psychology at Azusa Pacific University. He's the chair of the Department of Counseling and School of Psychology. Did I get that right?
You did.
That's a mouthful, and he owns his own practice. So he has both the academic side and the pragmatic side when it comes to what our brains do and how best to manage ourselves. Is that right?
Indeed, yeah. So we'll weigh in and see if we can provide some helpful information.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you doing this, and I know you've got lots of other things to do. The counseling load has not gone down in these days, and so I appreciate you tuning in and helping all of us out as best we can.
Sure.
So the question for me as a layman is, I know that we're now in a global situation we've never been in before. We've never hit the pause button on the whole world before. And psychologically, that's got to do all kinds of different things. We're a lot of different people with a lot of different brains, but I wonder if there aren't some universal, some common threads that are going on all over the world. And how do you see that as a psychiatrist and psychologist?
Yeah, no, as a starting point really for the conversation, I mean, one of the things that we know that ultimately we do have a different capacity to absorb and respond to the various challenges that life throws at us. Prior to COVID, we deal with circumstance and stressors, and then we develop strategies by which to deal with that. Some do better than others with that. On that, the main point that I think leads into the challenge, though, in part becomes the fact that we have two integrated systems that are ultimately processing what we're going through at any given time. Okay. We process both at a conscious level and at an unconscious level. We're aware of some things and we're not aware of some things. Those two systems working together help us kind of manage our lives and find some kind of peace and ability to adapt and grow and evolve. Under normal circumstances, those systems can become very, very challenged. In the circumstances that we find ourselves in, two fundamental problems have happened. A, the stressors have become extraordinary. They're, what language would you use, exponential, whatever. They're extraordinary. The stressors are just at a maximum level. It's instability within our homes, our finances, our relationships. So we've got an enormous stream of stressors. And the second capacity is it overloads basically our pre-existing systems to even deal with it. So biologically, we have two major things going on, an extraordinary amount of dynamics happening to us and an inability for our current systems to really understand it effectively, which leads in a sense to kind of almost psychological chaos and anxiety and depression because we feel ill-equipped really to deal with where we're at. And it makes sense. And we see this around the globe when we're dealing with colleagues in other countries, everybody, because it's basically conserved in our biology. So everybody's dealing with this dilemma. The strategies have been cut off. We don't have them the way that we did. And so that creates the unique challenge for us.
Some of us were barely holding it together as it is. And then you throw this in there. There's no manual for this. I mean, at best, right now we're creating a sort of a field log of what we went through, but there is not a manual.
No, not at all. We find ourselves almost similar to what Navy SEALs find themselves in as training to go into something. How do you develop cognitive structures to help you deal with the bad thing that's coming your way? The difference is that in that case, there's a preparation for it because it's known. In this case, it got dumped on us. And so the fact that most of the planet has been disoriented by this is absolutely no surprise. And it's expected. We're supposed to respond to stressful situations the way we're biologically required to, but it's overwhelmed that. Now we're trying to find our way out of the dynamic so we can find restoration of empowerment, basically.
So I've been talking about, when it's over or when we get out of this. Maybe the vocabulary I ought to develop is what you said. I ought to work on developing the cognitive structures to deal with things like this. Is that the right way to say that?
I believe so. I believe so. Making mental space available for health. And ultimately, if everything we're processing is basically this over stimulating these systems, there's a biological consequence to that because it's activating systems we have stress related systems that we're supposed to have to turn on to get us out of a situation and turn off. In this case, the on switch stays on. So we're always activated, and there's systems within the brain and stress-related hormones that are activated to get us ready for this fight or flight. And so you see this kind of frenetic, what do we do? Or we shut down. We kind of get into where in psychology we think of learned helplessness and those things where we just shut down and give up, and that leads to depression and anxiety, or we try to fight back. So the reality is, how do we build in mental space to start to gain some control over a situation it's not right now seeming very controllable?
Right. So help me with the pragmatics then. What can I do to best work through this, push back on the things that are pressuring in, prepare myself for we don't know what the future looks like. Even as states begin to talk about opening up again, it's not returned to normal. It's something different than normal.
No, and that's Jim. When we think of anticipatory anxiety, we're in the bad thing, just stewing and kind of marinating and all this stuff, and then we're anticipating an uncertainty of what's next, which really doesn't give us even a mental clear path out, because the future still seems as uncertain and connected to the current. So that has a limiting factor on that, and so that does create more challenge. The uncertainty of that.
Yeah. So worrying about the future isn't what I need to do.
Well, no, but I do believe that is planning for the future. Okay. Because the reality, to use a sailing metaphor, the winds came out of the sail, it goes down where we don't have any wind. So ultimately, but the wind is coming back again. So at some point, it's readying ourselves to be ready to move in a more active, empowered way, so that we're not just walking into the future wounded, that we have some capacity to gain strength and endurance. Here's the anticipation. It's not going to last. And at some point, what are we looking like 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months into the future? Is it a stronger version of ourselves? Is it a weaker version of ourselves? How do we do something to condition ourselves ready to be what's next?
Okay, so walk me into some of the pragmatics of that. What should I be doing? What should we be doing?
Well, I think number one, and I think these are, again, some common things, but number one, I would say we all do better with structure in our lives. There's freedom in the boundaries, and for some, the structure went chaotic, and so ultimately, in any given day, the day is winning. We're just bobbing around trying to react to things. So at some point, we have to reverse that. I believe that starts with structure. People find different ways to build in structure, manageable structure, not to increase anxiety, but to create a framework that says, in this day, these are some of the things that I'm going to do. I'm going to commit to some structure. So I believe it starts with developing that. Number two, I absolutely believe turn off the TV. It is a steady stream of information that's told repetitively in different, it's almost like the Tower of Babel. It's this constant stream of stuff. In looking at trying to make sense of it. I would discipline, and many are starting to do that. Get your one little update and turn it off, not have it in the background, turn the thing off. That is what activates the unconscious and conscious activation of our own stress. So one thing we can do is kind of put a shield up that says, no, I'm not going to take a steady stream of that. And it comes in music, it's coming in everything. We're hearing this narrative everywhere. And I think step one is start to develop structure. Step two is turn the TV off.
It's often negative, often catastrophic, and often highly speculative.
Well, totally. And at some point, it activates either the now it's your choice as the viewer. You're going to be angry and do or what. And so you're agitated by these things. It activates more uncertainty. And then you can sit and worry about all night long. So I just think at some level, take it in manageable doses, turn it off, let it be. So I do believe that's an important dynamic to do. And that helps protect the even both conscious and unconscious activation, because you're not just being bombarded with something that ultimately we can feel almost impotent to do anything about. What are you doing? So you just take it and then ultimately do nothing. It activates anxiety and depression and cognitive distortions in an extraordinary way. So I would do that. Another thing that I clearly recommend in doing is for spiritual formation to really rethink how we approach our spiritual life. I believe that every day should built into that structure is very intentional devotion. If there's couples involved or family involved, it includes everybody. Rethinking not the automatic response we might have had in terms of how we look at devotions, but to consciously look at that and surround a unified effort within the family around prayer. I just absolutely think my wife and I do that every day. I'm blessed that I have that opportunity to do that. But to start the day with a spiritual, being kind of bombarded with that, I think a little bit in terms of creating an intentional, the Psalms are good for that, a lot of lamenting in the Psalms and a lot of praise in the Psalms. So you can't go wrong with the Psalms on that. So I do believe the spiritual dynamic as a family or as an individual, don't make any difference, is making an intentional process with that. I think that's essential. In addition, I love what you have recommended from the pulpit regarding giving back to the workers, etc. I'm hearing more and more of that. I think that is just a wonderful thing to give back, and it doesn't matter how much. You're not giving back with the intentions to do some extraordinary thing for them. It's as much for you, the giver.
Right.
It's much for you to release, to give, to think of somebody else, and to extend yourself beyond yourself is healthy. I think every day that's a pushback. That's a total pushback. And there's ways to do it, whether or not it's texting, whether or not it's reaching out. There are ways to do it. Part of your prayer life could be looking for ways that God would bring to you to be able to do that. I think that's important. The physical activity, again, when we think of that, if you get up early in the morning or you do, dust off here's why, even physical 30 minutes a day. Okay. There's what are called brain-derived neurotrophic factors. It's just an interesting way to say that the brain has within it a mechanism to create protective elements against stress. One of the ways that gets activated is through physical activity and energy. So for how much stress is being bombarded, and we already agree it's a lot, at some level, having a daily effort, get up early, find a way to absolutely, it literally is not just good for your physical health and well-being, it is a protective factor within the central nervous system.
Your brain is better when you exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. 30 minutes, I would say there. And then we're recommending self-improvement. Okay. Find a good book, a language, cook. Doing something that says it's an investment in yourself, in betterment, your improvement, to be able to continue to improve and grow as an individual. And really, what we're suggesting, even with a lot of our families, and we're still very active doing telestuff, is to take inventory at the end of the day. Every day gives you an opportunity to push back on the quarantine or to succumb to it. If you can identify 5 or 6 things that you did that are pushback things that you took opportunity to gain control of the cognitive space you have within the environment you have you won the day. You're not going to win every day, but at least on that day, you won. And the more you can string that together, you're fighting back, you're not succumbing, and that really does require mental toughness to do that.
I like that. That's actually part of the Ignatian prayer too. At the end of the day, that's good. Okay. Terrific. Okay, so that gives us some practical handles to get a hold of to begin to build boundaries within which we can be free.
I totally believe that. I totally believe that. And you find in that space an opportunity to let God really activate and grow so that you've minimized all of the other just negatives that are associated with where we're all living.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Terrific. Wonderful. Well, I appreciate that. That's a real practical look at what we can do right now, and I think that is the big question on everybody's minds. If we can get through, avoiding sickness with our physical health intact, what happens to our mental health? That's
Sure.
the stress and the strain right now. And I think I think you said this. Part of the anxiety of either to shelter or to go out and protest, it comes from the same place. It comes from fear, and a fear that's just wearing on our hearts and our minds. So being able to think about this and look at this practically is super helpful. I'm really grateful for that.
Delighted.
Yeah.
Delighted.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you again so much for letting me spend time with you today. This is helpful for me. This is helpful for my family and helpful for our church and everybody else who logs in to visit. So appreciate you taking time to do this.
Appreciate being asked. Thank you very much, Jim.